Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel. April 17th, 2018.
Warning: The Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, author of Liberalism is a Mental Disorder, Trump's War, and God, Faith, and Reason, Michael Savage.
Playing a very, very sweet song for all of you out there who expected something hard. There must be somewhere over the rainbow where true conservatives don't lie to your face, where it's not good guys versus bad guys and the other guys are the bad guys and you're the good guys. There must be a place on Earth or somewhere else, somewhere over the rainbow where no one has a forked tongue. There must be some place safe to listen. So let me begin the show with the first headline that I have for you, which is Gorsuch, Supreme Liberal. Of course, it's put another way. The Supreme Court just handed the Trump administration a loss on immigration, and Gorsuch was the tie-breaking vote, says the Associated Press. Newsmax puts it this way. Trump's Supreme Court picks sides with libs to stop deportation of criminal illegal alien. Oh, no, that's my headline. I have no way to tell you anything except the way I see it, so I'll say it the way I see it, which is, well, Gorsuch is a Supreme Liberal. Trump's Supreme Court pick sides with libs to stop deportation of criminal illegal alien. Well, I'm the only one in the media who warned you about this. Flashback, May 2017, Savage warned you about Gorsuch. Now, I'm not ready to play it yet. I just want you to remember what I'm about to tell you. There are many poseurs in the media who pretend to be conservatives, others pretend to be liberals. I pretend to be nothing but what I am. I have been an independent from the day I began in 1994. I call him as I see him. And I warned you about Gorsuch. I was afraid of this guy. Why exactly, I'm not so sure. But I want you to listen very carefully and never forget what you're about to hear from May 2017 on the Savage Nation. First of all, I'm going to make a prediction. Gorsuch is going to be another Roberts. Mark my words. They'll roll him. He's been rolled already. They've been brainwashing him inside. The witch, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and the others, they're breathing their foul vampire breath on his brain. He is going to be another liberal faker. As sure as watch and see if I'm wrong. That's all. Nothing long. 20 seconds. It's on michaelsavage.com. I put it up on Twitter. Flashback, May 2017. Savage warns about Gorsuch. So what do the geniuses have to say that? Wrong on this one, Michael. You know how many bots there are now on Twitter? It's full of bots. I mean, it's like machine-driven. Whatever I say now, they're saying I'm wrong. Simply because I try to point out the absurdity of Hannity and the cartel to which he belongs. I mean, you know, when I'm right, I'm right. When I'm wrong. But I know what I'm talking about. I am an independent. I have an objective reason to tell you the truth, which is to tell you the truth, or else I'll quit radio. The day I have to start telling you what I don't think is true, I will not work on radio. I'll do something else. Now, as you know, for the last few days, I've been extremely critical of Trump's big mistake in his missile launching against the so-called chemical weapon sites. There are only 3 or 4 people in the media who actually called it like it was. I was one. Alex Jones was another. My student on Fox News was another. He's a very good student. Whatever I say gets on Fox News that night on his show. He's an able student. And then, surprisingly, yesterday I read that Roger Stone, a longtime confidant of President Trump, also said it was Trump's mistake. Mr. Stone joins us today at the bottom of this hour to tell us his belief system on this subject, because I think he was misled by the neocons who have infected his administration, the neocons in the media, who were against him for a year straight and now pretend that they're as big as bootlickers. Trump's too smart to be taken in by the bootlickers in the radio business, in particular, who stabbed him in the back for a year straight and now support him on a daily basis. There's so many of them. There's a legion of them. They hated Trump for a year straight. They called you Trumpers, Trumpeteers, Trumpettes. And then the minute they saw he won, they became his greatest supporter. The greatest supporters now are those who attack them. So a leader knows one thing. Loyalty is the most important thing amongst friends or amongst associates. Nothing else really matters. So we'll talk about the war. And I know that you're pregnantly awaiting something else for me to discuss. I don't think I'm going to talk about that. But I did notice that Alan Dershowitz, who's been a lifetime liberal, who's now become a darling of the right, because he's showing some centrist instincts, was invited on by Mr. Hannity last night, thinking that Dershowitz could be rolled to remain a regular guest on his show. And Dershowitz surprised Mr. Hannity by saying things to him that Mr. Hannity was appalled at, I believe. Listen to clip number 1 and judge for yourself.
Well, first of all, Sean, I do want to say that I really think that you should have disclosed your relationship with Cohen when you talked about him on this show. You could have said just that you had asked him for advice or whatever, but I think it would have been much, much better had you disclosed that relationship. You should have said that, and that would have been fair to say that it was minimal.
So Dershowitz retains his integrity, even when appearing on a show on Fox, which he enjoys going on, obviously, and he needs the access or wants it. Whether he will continue to be invited on the show is another question that I cannot answer. So we can talk about that if you wish. It's not the biggest topic of all, but it's a huge topic in the media right now because, to be honest with you, if you think this is a small subject, you don't understand ethics and you don't understand the drama that's going on right now. You may say, well, it's only liberals trying to bring down another conservative. Well, you could look at it that way. That's one way to look at it, but it's not the only way to look at it. There are journalism ethics experts who have taken issue with Mr. Hannity's lapse of judgment. Kathleen Culver, director of the Center for Journalism Ethics at the University of Wisconsin, said that his audience deserved to know what connections he has to the newsmakers on which he comments. She added, this is not a small matter. An organization needs to have standards for the people who do its reporting or commenting. I mean, you could just say you're a commentator, not a journalist, but that's not good enough. You understand that? Indira Lakshman, journalism ethics chair for the Poynter Institute, said whether a news reporter or opinion journalist, rules are rules. And she said, if you want to maintain credibility with an audience and be honest with them, you have to disclose all facts. I agree with her. And I'm going to go back to something I learned before I was on the radio. I knew a very powerful attorney in Washington who I met through an unrelated matter. He's since deceased. He was an advisor to John F. Kennedy in the White House. Allegedly, he was one of the most powerful attorneys of his time. I know he was extremely prominent in Washington, D.C. He, at the time, owned a number of music stations, and I was just beginning in talk radio. I think I was on one station at the time. And he said to me, just remember one thing, Michael. He said, all you've got with your audience is your integrity. And the day you lie to them is the day you're going to lose them. I said, well, I know that. You don't have to warn me about that because there's nothing to lie about. He said, well, just remember what I said to you, that all you have with your audience is their trust as a commentator. And when you lose that, you're going to lose your audience. Well, I tried to be true to that, and thus far I believe I have been. And frankly, I have nothing to hide. And I hope that most others in the media understand that I am an independent conservative. I have been since 1994. I've never been a registered Republican, at least not recently. I don't remember if I have been or not. Nothing necessarily wrong with republicanism, but I didn't really feel comfortable with the check pants Republicans in my entire life. They were not my type, let's put it to you that way. And so if I think people on the left go off base, I tell you what I think. If I think people on the so-called right go off base, I tell you what I think. But you have to understand something. Most of you believe that it's a team game. You have the mistaken notion that those of us who are seen as, let us say, anti-liberal or anti-progressive, somehow all get together for beers at the end of the day. What you must understand, this is a vicious business that we're in. It's the most competitive business in the world. And when 3 of them or more have one agent, and you don't, that's me, you have to understand that they gang up on you in every way they can. They block you from shows. They try to undermine your advertisers. They hire bots to destroy you on social media. They're very rich. They're very powerful. They have some of the most important attorneys in the world with unlimited funds. And so if you're David versus their Goliath, what do you expect me to do? Keep my mouth shut? Who's going to defend me? If I'm not for myself, who am I? If I'm only for myself, what am I? I'll never forget that adage. So that's the beginning of the show, not the end, I hope. And the phone number is 855-400-7282. We're open for business on these or any other topic. But, Jim, hold on. Before we go to break, I want to go back to my first point. We wake up and we find out that we got stabbed in the back by Gorsuch, Trump's Supreme Court appointee. I was leery of Gorsuch from day one. And back in May of 2017, I went on the radio and I let's say, expressed my reservations. Try to be very straight up about that. And I expressed my reservations. As you will listen to the flashback May 2017, Savage warns about Gorsuch. Listen again. First of all, I'm going to make a prediction. Gorsuch is going to be another Roberts. Mark my words. They'll roll him. He's been rolled already. They've been brainwashing him inside. The witch, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and the others, they're breathing their foul vampire breath on his brain. He is going to be another liberal faker. As sure as watch and see if I'm wrong. That's all. That's all. Gorsuch, supreme liberal. Trump made a mistake in Syria. Roger Stone on at the bottom of the hour. But, oh, wait, I haven't gotten to this one yet. How many years have I been telling you about the garbage can that San Francisco has become under the progressive liberals who have taken over the city? How long? Too long. Well, this morning we read an article in a local mimeograph sheet all about the fact that the number one person who brings in tourists into this city is begging the city to clean up the filth and the bums. Now, I don't know if it's still in the on the mimeograph sheet. I think they dropped it already because it was too real. They couldn't have that. I don't see it anymore. It's actually, here it is. Clean up San Francisco streets, tourist industry pleads. You have no idea what this city has become in the last number of years since the progressive one-party system took over the state and the city. You have no idea what it's become under Pelosi's iron boot. You have no idea what it's come under Feinstein's iron skirts. You have no idea unless you've lived here. Do you know how many cars were broken into last year? You don't know, do you? It's swept under the rug. The dirty needles, the garbage, people injecting themselves with heroin and other drugs in broad daylight, tent camps, human feces in the streets, mentally incompetent, dangerous thugs called homeless, running after you in the streets, attacking women, attacking men, attacking children, and the police cannot do a damn thing. So the head of the tourist industry, Mr. D'Alessandro, said, we can't be quiet anymore. We've become complacent. Well, I'm really glad to hear that he's come down off of his high horse and we can't be complacent anymore. But unless you actually come to this city and see what the filth is like and see the danger you are in, and you see how much is spent on so-called homeless services that is doing nothing but buying them drugs and alcohol, you will come to understand that progressivism and liberalism is as broke as the federal government.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
I wonder who wrote the book of
I'm so not interested.
Tell me.
I don't know. I'm not in a rock and roll mood. That's why I played Judy Garland. I just don't know. It's such a crock of garbage, all of it. Just a crock of garbage. How can you believe anything that you hear anywhere anymore? How? Who do you believe now? How do you believe everyone's self-serving? Where was it written, all is vanity, number one? Number two, that it's all self-serving. You actually believe that those on the right who pretend to be for America and the good guys are cleaner than those on the left? Why do you believe that? Because they tell you that? So we can just talk about the other stuff if you want. The San Francisco horror stories. I'm glad to talk about that since I started the ball rolling on the awareness of America. Now it's cutting into their money. Maybe they'll do something about it. Do you know how many cars were broken into? There are streets filled with glass. They break into cars in broad daylight. They shoot up drugs in broad daylight. They defecate in front of your face in broad daylight. How is that even possible? Why are the police not allowed to do anything? Why have the homeless bums become sacred cows? If a human being descends to the level of criminality, why are they a sacred cow? Why? Why? Progressivism. It's a mental disorder. People cannot park their cars in the streets. Do you know how much money they spend every year on homeless bums? And yet the crime goes up? Cardboard cartons with bums in them in the front of expensive stores that merchants are spending a fortune for the rent, and you got a filthy bum in their doorway? He can't do anything or he'll get arrested for doing it? It's a very dangerous city. It's not just dirty. Very dangerous city. I told you that. It's supposed to be one of the greatest cities on earth, and look what it's become. It's always been liberal. I understand that. I mean, I moved here many years ago. It was always a beautiful liberal city. People left you alone by and large. But then what happened was the drugs took over, and the progressivism reached the tipping point of insanity where anything goes and everything's accepted except conservative viewpoints. Anyone who loves America is considered a criminal. And then they made it a sanctuary city, not only for illegal alien drug dealers and other criminals, but a sanctuary city for every nutcase in the history of the world gravitating here to the welfare state, not only of San Francisco, but of California itself. It is like a magnet for rodents. And if you put cheese out, are you going to get more rodents or less rodents? More or less. You can't put two and two together? You have to have a conference now on how to get rid of the feces and the needles?
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
It is the Savage Nation. Flashback, May 2017. Savage warns about Gorsuch. And it turns out, unfortunately, I was right. I said Trump made a mistake in Syria. I was one of only 3 people who are prominent in the media who said the same thing, who are normally known as staunch conservatives. The others who stabbed Trump in the back for a year and a half straight suddenly became as great as bootlickers, hoping to gain access and, of course, hoodwink you, the listeners, into thinking they were always for Trump. But I don't know. Look, if people have no memories, I can't give you a memory pill. Joining us now is Roger Stone, a lifetime friend of Donald Trump, who says Trump made a mistake in Syria. Roger Stone, line 10, welcome to the program.
Dr. Savage, delighted to be here.
Well, how many years have you known the president as a friend?
We have been friends for 40 years. I have worked on and off for him for about 30 years. He is in a positive sense, an extraordinarily stubborn person. Very much like Ronald Reagan, when he sets his mind to something, he'll make it happen. Tariffs, for example. But I think it's important to understand that since the moment of his improbable election, in which, in all honesty, your commentary played a major role, the deep staters around him, the permanent government in place, including members of his own White House staff and his policy advisors, have done everything possible to dilute, delay, water down, sidetrack, or kill all of the major initiatives on which he was elected. They wanted him to sign climate change. He said no. They wanted him to join TPP. He said no. They wanted him to scale back the tax cuts, and he said no. Well, that's why the economy is growing at 3%. When it comes
so Roger, we both agree that he's doing some great stuff, but the thing that had me call you this morning, and you so kindly agreed to come on the show, is that there are not too many people other than you and I and Alex Jones and maybe one or two others who actually say that the Syria strike was a mistake as a result of neocons whispering in his ear. Would you elaborate on that if you believe that to be true?
Look, how many times can the permanent government in place play the same dirty trick? It was only months ago that we launched a surgical strike on an air base in Syria in retaliation for reported chemical attacks that we still cannot prove were the act of the Assad government. General Mattis now admits that we do not have evidence of that. So it's entirely possible that was a false flag. We know of the White House Chief of Staff showing the president ghastly photos of children who'd been gassed. It was a campaign. He's a father. He has a heart. And I think he ordered an action there that ended up having a greater political statement than ever really changing the complexion of what's happening in Syria.
Roger, I want to go back to something that's very important because you're an insider. I am not. I don't know Donald Trump for 40 years. I know that I backed him for a number of reasons, mainly because I thought, A, he was the only one who could beat Hillary, which is true. And I also felt that his positions were identical to mine on borders, language, and culture, to summarize them in 3 words. And so I worked around the clock to get him elected. Does he understand that there are those in the media who are now pretending to be his greatest bootlicking friends, that they attacked him for a year straight before he won? Does he remember that?
In some instances, he does. In other instances, he doesn't. I think he now broadens it, because now, to him, that's who he's talking about when he says fake news. That said, when you consider the role of alternative media in his election, the Internet, this show, Alex Jones, InfoWars, Daily Caller, Breitbart, Town Hall, Gateway Pundit, Zero Hedge, all these terrific alternative, conservative, right-thinking sites, he never gives interviews to them. They don't have White House press credentials in most cases, yet he's giving his maiden interview as president to Leslie Stahl of CBS. Talk about yesterday.
Yeah. So look, Hope Hicks is gone. And she was a young person, maybe didn't have the skills that she needed for that job. Without knocking her, I mean, let's face it. Who's doing the job now? Who's his communication director?
Donald Trump is his communications director. Donald Trump decides who's going to interview with and who he isn't. He really is a control freak when it comes to control of his image. He's his own writer. He's his own wordsmith. He is his own phrase maker. He dictated at the top of his lungs the copy for all of his television commercials. And, you know, he understands the public relations media cycle. He knows.
Roger, again, I want to reiterate to people who they should know more about you. You know Donald Trump for 40 years as his confidant and friend. Would you say you're still on his good side?
Oh, I think there's no doubt about it. We are very good friends, and I have been a loyal supporter of his administration. I think he's done some miraculous things. Economic growth at 3%, on the verge of a peace deal in Korea. But this is a mistake. The president has too high a institutional regard for the military. I think he gives them the benefit of honesty in their assessments. I don't think he understands the way our military was politicized under Barack Obama, where globalists and leftists in the ranks were promoted, and those known to have Republican or more conservative sympathies were retired.
Wow.
Unfortunately, our military, like our intelligence services, have become completely politicized. They're run by a political agenda.
Roger Stone, I want to bring up a name. I call him the Walrus out of a lack of affection for him as a human being. It seems to me that it was rather convenient that the Walrus started his job as National Security Advisor on that Monday, while just 2 days before there was a very convenient chemical attack that he used as a pretext to egg the president on to the missile strike. Do you know the walrus at all?
I know John Bolton very well. I'm going to take a slightly different view of him than you. He's not a close friend of mine. I'm not claiming that he is. I met him when Ronald Reagan was president. He was a very key thinker in the whole peace through strength Reagan doctrine that was far different than the neocon interventionism that the Bushes then gave us. This is the Caspar Weinberger school of not getting entangled abroad. And the whole is based on the notion that if you're extraordinarily strong, people won't pick on you. It's only when you get weak that they start to be. Bolton then went to work for the Bushes. He's ruthlessly efficient, he's extraordinarily capable, and he's very smart. And now he's working for Donald Trump. I do not actually think he's an ideologue. I think he is an operative, a hitman, an executor. The Bushes said, hey, John, we need a phony Iraq war. See what you can go whip up, will you? And he did. So I would not presuppose that he is the orchestrator of this. He also has to know that given his Bush and neocon credentials, he's going to be watched very carefully. I also say this to you, Michael. How could anybody be worse than H.R. McMaster?
Well, Bolton is in there, and what worries me is that you said a few things right now that I'll remember a very long time. You triggered me when you said Bush, because I believe that the signaling we have gotten in the last number of days indicates that signals are being sent to the world and to the internal apparatus in this government and everywhere else that the Bushes are now running the country again.
I could not. In
some regard, especially with regard to foreign policy, it looked to me like, outside, Roger, again, you're the insider. I'm only an outsider who looks in from the outside. It looked to me like there was signaling saying the Bushes are now in control again.
That's a very, very astute observation. It explains the announcement of the pardoning of Scooter Libby. If the president pardoned a guy for spreading lies to get us into war, at the same time the guys around him today are spreading lies in order to get us into war. It's extraordinary. And
yes, but we went to war in Iraq based on the false lie, or the false statement, or let's say fake evidence that there were weapons of mass destruction. And the same team that did that seems to have provided the president with photographs of a gas attack that may or may not actually have occurred, or if it did occur, we don't know who did it.
Remember this, that the president tweeted 10 days ago, I think it's time to start pulling our troops out of Syria.
Right.
That's when the deep state boys hit the panic button. Quick, you guys better hook up a gas attack. That worked last time. I mean,
Roger, why did they want us to stay in Syria? Is it, as I suspect, they want to divide Syria into at least four new states?
Look, on one hand, you have Assad financing Hezbollah, financing Hamas, propped up by the Russians. He's a bad guy. On the other side, you have ISIS and 1,000 other subsets of ISIS that are more fanatical than the original, propped up by the Saudis. By the way, they're not friends of ours either. Is it worth an American dollar or a drop of American blood? I don't see our inherent national interest here. I just don't see it.
Neither do I. You see, that's the issue. National interest. And Trump ran as a man of peace. I wrote about that in Trump's War, Mr. Stone. I said one of the reasons I backed him is he's going to get us out of foreign entanglements. She wanted to get us into them. He ran as a peace candidate, not as a war candidate. He ran as a non-interventionist. He ran as a nationalist. Those are the reasons I backed Mr. Trump. And yet I wake up and say, wait a minute, this is the opposite of what we all thought we were going to get. And yet on so many other levels, we're doing so great in this country. I mean, other than the constant drama brought about by the vermin in the media and by Mueller's relentless, heartless persecution of the president. When is that going to ever end?
This is a mistake to underestimate the deep enmity of the two-party duopoly that's run this country into the ground. The establishment of the Republican and Democratic parties have cultural disdain for Donald Trump, and because he's not of the political class, and they have deep resolve to remove him no matter what. I mean, it is outrageous that Michael Cohen is being put under surveillance, and that they break into his locker, his office for records, and this is an act of the Trump Justice Department. The Trump Justice Department is investigating, everybody who works for Donald Trump. This makes no sense. Rosenstein has got his own legal culpability in Uranium One. Hard jail time, provable crime, quite easy, I think. I wrote a long piece about it for the Daily Caller, and make the case that Uranium One involves Mueller, Comey, McCabe, and Rosenstein. The four.
Let's take a pause. Can you stay with us another few minutes after the break and take calls from the listeners?
Be my honor.
Okay, listen, folks, we're talking to someone who knows what he's talking about. You hear a lot of commentary, but you don't know what to believe. I don't blame you. Roger Stone is a loyalist to President Trump. He's known him for 40 years. If you have a quick question, you can call me at 855-400-7282, and maybe we'll get you up there. 855-400-7282 to speak with Michael Savage and Roger Stone. One shot, 800. No, that's not the number. What is my number? Who remembers all these numbers? 855-400-7282.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
Hardship case, maybe. Honest mistake, maybe. It really doesn't matter to the IRS. They don't care. When you owe back taxes, forget about it. Or you haven't filed tax returns in a time, they're going to come for you. Like with Rhonda. It didn't matter that she's a single mom, a nurse living paycheck to paycheck. It didn't matter that the reason she owed thousands in back taxes to the IRS was that her ex said he'd file their tax returns. That didn't matter. He didn't. The IRS was aggressively pursuing her, garnishing her wages. They were destroying her. Rhonda was trapped in what she thought was a no-win situation. And if you think that the story about Rhonda is something you can relate to, I want you to call Optima Tax Relief. Optima knows that behind every tax problem are honest, hardworking people with families, homes, savings, and paychecks that need protection, which is how they've resolved over $500 million in tax debt for their clients and are A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau. Write it down. Call Optima Tax Relief at 800-731-2474, 800-731-2474. Once again, 800-731-2474. We go back to a man who's been a personal friend and advisor to President Trump for over 40 years, still totally supporting him and yet disagrees on the neocon-inspired missile strike in Syria. Roger Stone, welcome back to the Savage Nation.
Good to be here.
Well, I tell you, I'm flooded with calls, and I want to take one right now. Pete on WDRC. Pete, fire away, make it quick. No, see, I love this. It's like quick on the draw, and the other one already went to sleep. KLIF, Stacy, line 2. Go ahead, you're on the Savage Nation.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. Question is why Mr. Stone thinks this country continues to have this incestuous relationship with Saudi Arabia.
All right, Mr. Stone, any answer to that?
Yes. Look, I worked in Washington as a lobbyist in the Bush years. The Saudis have a deep understanding of the American political system, and they have vast sums of money to grease palms with. Whether it's charitable, whether it's tax-free, whether it's business investment.
Well, no, we understand how they get the access, but I think the lady is asking something different, and I think you got that as well, which is, are they really our friends, and are they to be trusted?
No, absolutely not. They talk out of both sides of their mouth. Look, they finance Wahhabism, the most virulent and violent sect of Islam, and then at the same time, they tell us that they're people of peace.
Yeah. And then they hang their friends upside down in the Four Seasons Hotel and beat them around the ankles, and then they steal their money. Great people. Roger Stone, I want to thank you for joining us on the Savage Nation. If you have the fortitude and desire to take additional calls, we can call you back after the top of the hour. The rest of you be here, because we're going to talk about Gorsuch, Supreme Liberal, San Francisco horror stories, and how Trump made a mistake in Syria.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
Me, a cat, moving in with a new human. It took a little getting used to. She has these weird games she likes to play, like this giant feather. She sticks it in my face. I swat it away. She sticks it in my face. I swat it away. It's almost like she thinks I enjoy it. But seeing how much fun she gets out of it, well, I guess it makes it all worth it. Humans.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
So, I'm a dog, and I just got adopted by this new human guy, and I'm starting to wonder how he got along without me. I mean, okay, something as simple as walking around the block. He's got this leash thing, and he puts me on one end and him on the other, and I'm just taking him around. I think he's afraid of getting lost. Without that leash and me guiding him along, I don't think he'd find his way back home. But it's kind of cute.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.